Sarah Manning from Be Natural, and I'd like to warmly welcome Jennifer Eisenacher. She is a naturopath here in Singapore. She's been here 13 years, and she's a very dear friend of mine, which is how she managed to get her arm twisted to join us on this opportunity to sort of sit around the table and pick someone's brain. So Jennifer works mainly with women, and often those women have experienced trauma. Trauma comes in many forms, and I'm going to ask her quite a bit about trauma as we go through the process. Jennifer, is there anything else you'd like to just sort of say that will help to give people an idea of who you are?
Thanks so much for the introduction, Sarah, and thanks so much for having me here. I think it's an extremely interesting topic because, yes, it's something that is something that I work with on a regular basis, and I think it's just really important to spread the knowledge and the wisdom that we have acquired over the years, and to just help as many women as possible in their journey, because fertility is just something really well, it's close to the heart, right? I mean, it really goes to women's essence. And when I started to work, maybe I start with that. I wasn't specialized in trauma, and I had never had the goal to do that. It was actually it just developed by coincidence, if you want to call it that, or just by it's just how it developed. And so I happened to work mainly with women, or the people who came to see me were mainly women, and quite intuitive. So that means I work a lot with my hands, and my intuition is usually guiding me a lot where I want to work on the body. So I'm a naturopath who works with the hands, which again is already something quite unusual. And I was always drawn to the uterus. So then I realized, how come I'm always drawn to the uterus? Whether the woman, she comes for a migraine or she comes for a back pain, or I always still want to work on the uterus. And I realized that women have trauma, and I started to see trauma, like I see patterns, or I see it's like patches, or sometimes there is like this gray gooey thing on the ovaries. So it's just the whole area feels like really quiet, or yeah, so it's just how this whole thing developed. And then I started to become really curious about trauma. And as a naturopath in Germany, we study about 20% is about psychology. So that's the just from the background. So that's important to know. That's not like we just know about herbs and natural remedies.
That's good to hear, because I didn't know that.
Yeah, and we are like allowed to treat medium or mild depression. Of course, nothing with like suicidal, but it's a medium depression. It's already quite severe. So we do have that capacity in Germany. And I started to educate myself on trauma, and I did workshops on trauma. I volunteered with for example, refugee women on the Greek island of Lesbos, and wow. I've received some training by an osteo, so that's how I work also a lot on the pelvis. And by no means I have the same skills as an osteo, but you know, with some basic skills already, you can do a lot of work. And the pelvis for many women is a mess. And when I say it's a mess, you know, I'm just quite casual about trauma because it's already heavy enough, and it makes it a little bit easier when we keep things light. And so for many women, the pelvis, the whole area is actually a mess. Now that can be one, you have like a structural issue where an osteo would be a great person to help, but often there is a trauma component. So trauma actually can have so many components, whether it matters. For example, what happened to your mother, your grandmother, like when your grandmother was pregnant with your mother, when the eggs were already formed in your mother, right? And you were made from that egg. So that means what your grandmother experienced is already physically, that information is in your body. So if we look back, what happened at that generation, like how much war was there, or how much gender inequalities, that is already in your body. Now, I work a lot with, for example, women from the Indian or like South Asian part of the world. And of course, these kind of topics are even more relevant. And already coming from Germany, I mean, this is wartime, right? But what happened to our, at least for example, to my grandmother, And yeah, it's just really interesting. And often when I start to talk to women, because most women don't know they have trauma, it's like, what is even trauma? Like some women think just because she hasn't been raped or she hasn't really experienced something really really violent, that there is no trauma, but that is not true. Trauma can come in so many different ways, and I think we speak a bit maybe later more about how trauma shows. But trauma is just such an important role. And to be honest, I don't know why no one looks at trauma and gynecology together, because for me, they cannot be separated. So once and I was also coming from my own personal experience with like my own gynae issues, where I realized like that holistic concept for gynae issues, for me, it's the only way to look at it, because this male approach to gynecology just doesn't work.
Well, that's what comes across, isn't it? We have a masculine dominant energy of, you have a problem, let's fix it. And you know, it's kind of symptom, solution. Let's just work with the ticking the boxes. And
exactly.
I think now one of the wonderful things about what I'm seeing around the world is that there is this women's wisdom starting to rise up, which is saying, let's look at the whole picture. Let's step back a moment and take a deep breath. You know, let's not rush in. Let's just pause. You know, and I think we're all in so much of a hurry with our goals and to-do lists and this masculine energy that has been so profoundly dominant. It is actually a joy to find someone saying, no, let's just pause, let's have a look, and let's just have a conversation about what's going on in your body. And I'm going to listen so carefully to you. To me, that feels like a gift.
I mean, this whole area, it's just been really mind-blowing. I mean, once it's from my own experience, and then having worked with so many women and having worked on so many uteri, just to feel, what does a uterus feel like when it's healthy, and what does it feel like when it's not? And even the ovaries, so this whole area, like, it's just really impressive. And of course, then the effect it has on fertility, because this is all what's the topic here for today. And I think this one is like, from as a naturopath, you know, what I do with Panakaya is, of course, looking at even we cover the basics. Like when someone comes for any kind of treatment or sessions, we look at, I mean, one is from a normal naturopathic side, like what do you eat, how's your sleep, what's your medical history. But for me, what is even more interesting and more important is, what's your family story? And this is not what I ask in an intake form, because it's obviously quite personal. But in the first few sessions, if it's like, some people may take longer to feel comfortable, and I will not ask questions. Like, I know I always assume that a woman comes to me with trauma, so I will not be probing questions. For me, the primary concern is making her feel safe, making her feel safe and in control. And once that is the case, then we can start to work. But this has to first be established, and also the rules around how we work, that I'm not going to ask her questions about, oh, what happened and what did that do to you? I'm not a psychotherapist. And, you know, when we work with trauma, we have to respect it, because we don't want to mess anyone up, because already the situation is bad enough. And some women, they may not even know that there is trauma, because sometimes their mind just makes you forget things, and there's a reason why you forgot. So we don't need to know what happened. And before we can even start to work on any trauma, we need to establish this feeling of being safe. So the first part of our work is going to be around what can I help the woman with, or what can she do herself? So a lot is about empowerment. What can she do to make herself feel supported? And that comes, whether it's with food, diet, like just even what we eat, or taking time for yourself, going to nature, getting sun, exercises. I love to work around like movement. So a lot of health issues can actually be solved with movement, because we're so static and we don't move enough in our lives. So whether it's dancing, specific exercises that encourage the flow of the energy, or the chi or the prana in the whole gynae area, so that can have a huge impact.
Wow, that is just so exciting to hear. As a yoga teacher, as someone who is constantly telling women that they are sitting for so long at a desk. And what you're telling, as a naturopath, not only are you telling me how to change my diet and my sleep and my exercise, but you're also saying, let's move the pelvis and get blood and circulation of energy through it. Wonderful. That's music to my ears. Thank you so much for that endorsement of what I do. But I love the idea of dance too. Do you have a particular kind of dance that you would recommend, or does it not matter?
Well, I dance myself, and I actually, maybe also about my background, I used to be in banking. So I was hardcore finance, career, had short hair. I was doing martial arts. I was competing against men, same weight, which is kind of unheard of. So very, very male, just trying to fit into this male society and work environment, which totally didn't work. And of course, I got gynae issues. So that gives you a little bit of a background why I work so much with gynae issues and career women. And I would say when it comes to movement, do something that you like, but anything that is flowing is great. So most of the Latin dances are good, and something that really helps you move, whether that's zouk, bachata, anything that, or reggaeton, even if you just do it yourself, or if you just watch some YouTube videos and you just copy what they do. And it's great to how you feel as a woman, because that will be another part of my work, is how I can help a woman feel great about herself. So movement is a fantastic way about it. Like I also dance tango, so I dance a few Latin dances, but tango is one of them. And tango is not great, I would say, for fertility, because the body doesn't really move much, but it's really great for the confidence, how you feel as a woman. So in that regard, again, it can help, but this won't help you with the movement and the flow of the energy. Just more like, how you feel as a woman.
I'm sexy, I'm gorgeous. Yes.
So that's all important. And a lot, or I have to go one step back and like, what is the sequence of the treatment? So first is making a woman feel safe, hearing her family story, what's really going on. So one is from a medical perspective, but then what else is going on? Like that for me is almost more important, because the symptoms are usually, honestly, is quite easy to treat. Symptoms is just, we're looking at, let's say she has gut issues. All right, so then we will look at what you eat, how much is your stress, how is your sleep. Like again, it's a holistic approach that for me just works the best, because it takes time at the beginning and it might be a bit frustrating. It's like, why you ask so many questions, but then we can quite pinpoint where are the little things where you can change, because I know that you don't have time. So I'm not going to waste your time, and I want this to be as effective as possible. So we do minimum amount of changes, but the right changes. That is going to give you an impact in your health. Now, once the physical body starts to feel better, your mind also is going to feel better. This is often where we can get this, getting out of this, like everything is dark and gray and life is no fun. Because when we have fertility issues, a lot of that evolves around this kind of topic, and it's very emotionally charging. I've seen so much suffering, and it's just not a lot of fun.
Yeah. There's so much frustration and anger and self-criticism and it really helps if the husband is in tune, but sometimes he's not as well, and that just adds even more.
Yeah, and then we have this like cultural background where, for example, I've heard, for example, an Indian woman, gorgeous woman, really beautiful, so just cries like, the only thing that is expected from me is to give birth to a son, and I can't even get pregnant. Like, I'm not worth anything. And to hear these things, it's just it's heartbreaking. But then on the other hand, when we start to work on, okay, how it's not even about fertility, and that at that moment, if someone feels really so crushed, is really bringing them back to feel human, to feel good as a woman. And then once we get also the shift, because these are often then also career women, right? Because there's so much pressure on them, like especially having grown up maybe without money, or being a woman and not having really that many like maybe rights, or having seen how your mother, grandmother grew up, and you don't want to be there, or you're the breadwinner for the family. That means you're very male. And that woman will be carrying a lot of sense of responsibility, financial pressure, maybe. I was like, I have to do these things. So once we are in this male environment, what you just mentioned is a checklist. Like, I want to get pregnant, so I do A, B, C, D. And I've done these things, and I still want pregnant. Like, there's something wrong with me.
Exactly. Such a male attitude, isn't it? Oh, drives me mad.
Yeah. So once we start to look at, what does it mean to me to be a woman? How do I feel as a woman? How do I define myself as a woman? What's the relationship to my mother? These are really important things. And now there also, I do things then with art. We do certain, I give certain homework to do. So this is quite, every case is unique, you know, but this is, that's why I say it's so holistic, because we need to look at so many different aspects. And with the intuition, whether it's through a remote session, like online, or whether it's in person, I will ask a lot of questions. Now, of course, a woman has, that's why that feeling safe is so important. And with intuition, and often the women tell me, it's like, your questions always like, you know, right on spot. Or it's not to make her feel bad, but it's about like, it's making you think. And maybe these questions can be the homework until the next session that we have. And maybe there can be journaling, there can be some soul searching. And then that together with the exercise to get it physically out of the body is really important. Now, I'm not talking too much, Sarah.
No, because everything you say just makes so much sense. We are seeing the body as a holistic being, where small changes, we start with the physical and we make small diet changes where you've flagged. That makes so much sense. And then we sort of start looking at moving the body. But I think it's the subconscious messaging that comes through trauma. And that's what your intuition is trying to dig for. Is that right?
Yeah. Now, I also, another key thing that we have to consider is the nervous system. That's another thing why I don't understand why people don't really work more with the nervous system, because for me, the nervous system is key. One, because most of us, we live in a very stressful environment, city life. Now we have all the anxiety with the current situation that the world is in. And so that all adds up. And especially when we have a trauma background, which most women have, then that just adds on. So already I have to assume that the woman who comes to see me has a quite high level of, say, stress levels, anxiety.
Yeah. Actually, the word I use is hypersensitivity. Because when you are stressed, when you have trauma, you are hypersensitive to even small things. Would you say that's true?
Yes and no. So hypersensitivity for me, since I'm like a very sensitive person, which means I feel people, I feel frequencies. So yes, I am definitely a very sensitive person, but I wouldn't by definition say that is necessary for trauma, because you can also, like, if you have experienced, or when you have unresolved trauma, yes, your nervous system is haywire, and your limit, your capacity to take on more is already, you're at your limit, you cannot take on more. For me, hypersensitivity can, I see it more in the sense of someone is a very a light being, which means very intuitive, or just picking up on the emotions of other people, being sensitive to the environment, to the food you eat, and that can make you sick. So that, of course, would also then have an impact on the nervous system. But I try to, I don't see them really as exactly the same for me, in my perspective. But definitely we have, whenever there's trauma, there is a hypersensitivity. But it can also be like, you know, when there's trauma that the woman has to completely shut down. So the body is in this, it's, of course, it can be in this like fight or flight mode that's very easily aroused, or it can be in the freeze mode. So freeze mode means that when the body is not feeling anything, and then when you work on the body, you will feel that perhaps the woman does not really have much sensitivity around her whole gynae area and the pelvis, or the other parts of the body where there is no connection, or it feels just it's not part of her. And when you work with a woman who doesn't really have much sensation in the pelvis area, then it feels like that. When you work on that body, it's like there's nothing much there. So we have to kind of wake things up, or sometimes even the ovaries, they feel like they're sleeping. So with the it's more like on like biodynamic kind of body work, where we help this energy flow to improve. And I've had sessions when this gooey kind of gray layer just lifted off and the ovaries started to glow. So it's really magical.
Wow.
Yeah. And also, I think you had one question, like how trauma relates to for like fertility. And for example, I've worked with women who say they've been trying to get pregnant for 10 years, didn't work. They had IVF. Now they want to have a second child, still is not working. And we've, but if there was, for example, a miscarriage, an abortion, a pregnancy loss, all these are like, you are destined to have some kind of trauma in the uterus if that has not been resolved. And often the woman hangs so much on this little being that decided not to be born. The connection is so strong, there's no space for another one. So if we work on that and help her let that go, then there's space. And I've had sessions when literally a woman got pregnant the same day or the day after.
Oh my gosh. So what you're saying is miscarriage is a holistic thing that happens. It's not just a physical release of a
oh, there is not.
There's just so many more layers to this. And
of course
we do not acknowledge it at all in our Western approach to medicine. Oh, you just do a clear out and off you go.
No, that's not it. And also I think it's really important to take the time to grieve, because it is a loss, and it doesn't matter whether you're 3 weeks into a pregnancy or 3 months. Of course, the longer the more traumatic. But even if it's a very early miscarriage, or you decide, it's another thing is if a woman decides to abort, if it's not like that, if it's not really done in a conscious way, if it's just like, okay, let me mind. I just do it, and then I distract myself with Netflix and shopping and some alcohol. You are destined to just keep that trauma with you, and even like to build trauma. When if you do this in a very conscious way, then you have just let's put it that way. If you whether it's any kind of pregnancy loss, if you deal with it in a conscious way, in a holistic way, you also have the possibility to even avoid trauma from developing. So that's why usually I treat women as fast as possible, whether that's again remotely or in person, because it just can help her let go of these emotions before they manifest in the physical body, because that's when we start to have all kinds of physical symptoms later on. That is often, it shows us mystery illness, because the nervous system is haywire and nothing really works and no one really knows what's going on.
So immune system, digestive system, it's all sort of part of the same response to a nervous system that's just out of balance.
So again, that's why this holistic approach for me, it's just so powerful, and I've seen it work so many times. So it's just...
I love what I could sit and listen to you for hours, because you have such wisdom. I love what you're saying. But there's one thing that we've not touched on, and I know it wasn't part of our list, but I want to just touch on taboo. Trauma in women is often taboo. I mean, miscarriage is taboo. And I think the pressures that society places on women to not talk about, well, even if it's to do with rape or inappropriate Uncle Joe with his hands where they shouldn't be, all of these things, we're told, oh, just keep quiet, don't make a fuss. It's profound, isn't it?
It is. And I think even with like female circumcision, that we still have in Singapore, that alone is a topic that it's not really spoken much about, but any kind of invasion that was not really a woman's choice, whether that's walking on the street and getting looked at in a not so nice way, maybe not so much in Singapore, but most women, I think, probably have made some kind of experience with like not feeling respected as a woman. So any kind of event that goes, I call it like against the honor of a woman, or that she feels not respected, that is something that should be addressed. And there are many ways to work on it. But definitely like keeping it quiet, swiping it under the rug, just because you don't see it anymore, but just the pile under the rug gets bigger and bigger.
And so actually we internalize it further.
And that's how we cause trauma. So I mean, trauma is basically, it can be a big isolated event, or it can be a chain of events, but it was a situation that was overwhelming, and the body just somehow shuts down because it doesn't know how to deal with it. And when we work on letting that go, that's why you see that initial framework of that holistic concept is so important when we look at the body from a trauma perspective, because
yes,
if I just work on trauma, that won't work. Like for example, when I work with the refugee women, and my task was just like, let me explain you a little bit. So it's the second biggest, or at the time it was the second biggest refugee camp in Europe. The refugee women who were there were mostly from Afghanistan and from Africa. They weren't from Syria, or the people from Syria, they usually get passed on quite quickly because of the rules in the EU. Now, we had one osteo, a female osteo, and myself. So we were the only female therapists. Now you can't have, even though there are more male like osteos or physios, but you can't have a man treat, even physically touch a woman from Afghanistan who's Wales. That's just not possible. So that osteo and me were the only female therapists. And you know, some of the women had such bad back injuries. Some of them could barely walk because of what had happened to them. And sometimes even just reading the intake form from, or like the referral letter from Doctors Without Borders was already enough to mess me up. So, you know, it was really something where we had to be really well for yourself to. Yeah. So that's where also, you know, that psychology training came really in handy, because I had some psychotherapists psychologists to coach me how to prepare for the situation. And so, but as women, you know, it's like there's no one else to do it, because we only have so many slots in a day. So even I thought, well, this is too much. I'm not an osteo, but who else is going to do it, right? There is no one else. And I realized, even with like the most gentlest approach, because I don't want, like, the woman is in pain. Like, even like, I realized the gentler I am, the bigger the impact. And this is how my whole treatment concept changed. All this, you know, most people go to manipulation, doing fast and harsh things. I don't want to shock the body, because I don't like to be shocked. Why should I shock the body? For me, this concept doesn't make sense. So I realized just putting my hand, because I heal a lot. I mean, I touch people with the hands and magic happens there. So that proved to be really powerful. But then I also, when like I was basically told, you just, you know, you take the intake form, you do your sessions, you only have 40 minutes. So it's like really little time. But I realized these women, they are so scared. I cannot just ask her to undress or do this and that. So I learned Farsi. So that's the first thing I did, is like I just asked some other women, hey, teach me Farsi, because I cannot work if I don't speak Farsi. And it was just simple words, you know, to introduce myself, what's my name, where I'm from. And then it was words like, do you have pain? Where is the pain? Is it a little bit? Is it a lot? Show me, you know, just slowly, just small words. And just by speaking a few words of Farsi, the women were like smiling. They were like, oh, you know, someone is really respecting me, really seeing me. And that changed that I could actually treat the women. So going from, because you cannot do trauma work or like any kind of physical work on someone who is tense and scared, right? So by doing that, just putting in this little bit of effort of learning, you know, a few words of Farsi, completely made it possible that actually I saw really big changes then in like, for example, the back pain, or with the little time and the little means that we had, how much still we could get done. So that was really very interesting for me, and it showed me, like, with the role of trauma, or whether it's also the physical impacts, how much actually you can do, and especially when you are super gentle. And this is how I work. Everything, it's gentle. And this kind of approach for women, especially when there's a trauma component, in my opinion, or what I've seen,
gentleness,
that just works.
Actually, safety and gentleness. Safety has to come first. That's what you said. But then gentleness, respect, and giving her the time to answer your questions and reflect and feel what's really going on. It's a nurturing approach.
Yeah, and you know, I'm also I also do have women like as a doula. So with like the doula work, and like I have like when we do, whether it's fertility work or trauma work, or helping them prepare for like a fearless birth when there's trauma, helping them connect with the body, you can often see already during the pregnancy how a woman is connected to her own body. Because if, for example, there's trauma and there's a problem with her conceiving, right? So she goes for IVF, then maybe there's a troublesome pregnancy. So there's all this kind of trauma.
It just builds, of course, and builds and builds. And then, of course, childbirth is the ultimate, I feel safe, I can do this, I can manage this, I am powerful and I'm strong. And a woman who's experienced trauma feels none of that. She feels totally undermined and minimized. And going into this massive challenge, it's like climbing Everest, delivering a baby. And you know, if you are injured, you're not going to get to the top without a great deal of help.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I think some women, they feel they go into maybe cesarean is like an option for them, because, or to use like epidurals to help cope with the pain, because the normal coping mechanisms, maybe they're not really there, or she doesn't know them, she's not familiar with them. Yeah. But you know, even a woman who has experienced trauma, it can be a beautiful pregnancy, it can be a beautiful birth experience. So I think what is also really important is to let go of that old narrative, the story that you have been living. So by resolving that trauma or working on it, it can change the woman's path. And pregnancy is not the ideal time to work on trauma, but is better than looking at it just right before the birth.
Right. Well, ideally, the best time is to do it 3 months before you try to conceive, and just be in a really good place, right? But well, how many of us are conscious of that? So hang on, when a woman's trying to conceive, let's just see, I mean, how would a woman know that there is trauma there? I mean, what are the signs that, so I'm trying to conceive, I'm struggling. And how would I know that there's trauma lurking there that I'm really not honoring or recognizing?
So any kind of gynae issues, any kind of surgery or something like that has been going on, or you just feel pain, discomfort, you don't feel anything. If you know, or you have reason to suspect there was abuse, like sexual abuse, or you witnessed violence against your mother, for example, like if your mother experienced violence, if you know, like your mother, your grandmother, they experienced not so nice experiences as a woman, you can already suspect that there's something in you. If you are not feeling good as a woman, that's another thing. Like a lot of career women, they focus on like doing things, so with like a conscious male approach, a logical mind, but the female way is different. So if you're not feeling great as a woman, it can really have a big impact also on your fertility, because fertility, it's like the ultimate expression, right, of like this feminine, like women's bodies, we're made with a uterus, and we have this ability to give birth. Of course, it doesn't mean just because you have not given birth, you're not a full woman. Of course, it doesn't mean that at all. But this is just how women we have been made. And if there is this deep conflict with the feminine, like not feeling good as a woman for whatever reason, it's likely going to have an impact, or can have an impact on your fertility or how you feel during the pregnancy. So in a summary, is the early.
But do you know, I think most women of today's society, we have been through the school system, learn, churn out, pass exams, through further education, into a job. We have been programmed into a masculine way of doing things. I would argue that every woman has some measure of not being connected with their feminine side. Definitely me. I don't feel like I'm well and truly disconnected sometimes. And if it hadn't been for the yoga teacher who 30 years ago taught me yoga for women, and she was like light years ahead. Wow. And she was the one who opened me up and created this spark of incredible power. And it was through working with her that I became I just want more of this. and through her chose to become a yoga teacher. So profound release and opening and honoring, and just this, I feel $1 million. And it's not very many women who can say, I am a woman and I feel $1 million. I think we're just not used to opening up to that.
Yeah.
And I would also argue that as a result of dismissing our femininity, I don't know many women that go, yippee, my menstruation started today. You know, how many women are celebrating their menstruation and going, oh my God, I'm just so fertile. I'm so amazing. I'm so connected with my body. And yes, during my menstruation, I just need some time out. I'm going to clock out early. I'm going to go and lie down because my back aches. How many women actually celebrate their menstruation? And it doesn't matter if you don't celebrate your menstruation for 1 month, but when you don't celebrate it for 25 years and then go, switch, okay, now I want to be fertile, I want to produce children. We can't do that.
Yeah, I mean, it also goes then what you just mentioned. I mean, it was also with the basically with all the contraception, for example, how we use them, what we do to the body, how we lose the touch of ourselves. And then, of course, you know, for a woman who's trying to conceive and then getting her menses, it's such a disappointment. And so a lot, again, you know, working on emotions, it's important because as soon as we start addressing them, it's just so liberating. And when that shift goes away from, I need to get pregnant, or this is my only goal right now, to, I just want to be healthy, I just want to feel good in my body. So much is possible. And it's a journey. It really is a journey. And it's not just something you do, like you just, I mean, it can happen, you know, very quickly. If your body is ready to let go of the trauma and we help the body let it go, then that woman might get pregnant really, really soon. That can happen. I mean, it has happened in the past, but we cannot expect this to happen. Sometimes this process might be a year or a year and a half or even longer of really working on you, especially if there's a lot of fear. If there's a lot of, I've never really looked at these things because it never felt safe. And even now, maybe if she doesn't really have maybe connection to her family, or she feels all alone, or the partner is also not really supportive, then that can set her up. And then again, you know, when we look on later for the birth or the pregnancy, the postpartum period, if there is already a trauma component, you have a higher risk for like anxiety, depression. So the sooner we work on these things, the easier it is going to be, because you know your needs, you know how to take care of yourself, you know how to nurture yourself.
So
and that
gather your team, your support team of preferably women who resonate with the holistic path. Oh, my dear, I've got a feeling we could chat for the next 2 hours, but I know your time is precious. And I know that there will be questions from our listeners. So let me, first of all, invite anybody who has spent time with us today to, if they have questions, we will respond to them. So you can either send them to hello@benatural. benatural.com.sg. Let's get it completely right. Or alternatively, you can contact Jennifer directly at panakaya.com, and you can read more about the work that she's done and some of the blogs that she's written. So without further ado, I would really, really like to thank Jennifer for her time today. And Jennifer, is there just one thing that you would like to leave us with to inspire us to keep moving forward?
Well, if there's one thing, then I would say the body's magical and the body can heal. And just because you haven't found an answer yet, that doesn't mean that this situation has to remain like this.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you so much.